$50 million, one weekend, one golf course. While Caitlin Clark was collecting endorsement deals that exceeded what most WNBA players earn in their entire careers, her so-called peers in women's basketball went completely silent. Not a single congratulations, not one public acknowledgement, not even a passive-aggressive comment disguised as support, just deafening. Calculated silence that told us everything we needed to know about what's really happening behind the scenes. The LPGA celebrated her openly. NBA superstars praised her performance. Tiger Woods himself compared her confidence to his own breakthrough moments, but the league that should have been proudest of their stars' crossover success, they acted like it never happened. And the message that silence sent echoed far louder than any words could have. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice. And it revealed something that many of you have been saying for months. The WNBA doesn't know how to handle greatness when it shows up in their building. If you've been watching this dynamic unfold and thinking something doesn't add up here, hit that like button right now. Because what we're about to break down isn't just about one golf tournament. It's about an entire system that would rather protect mediocrity than celebrate excellence. Let's be clear about what actually happened at the RSM Classic Pro-Am, because the surface story doesn't capture the full scope of this situation. This wasn't some casual celebrity golf outing that accidentally generated attention. This was a masterclass in star power, market value, and what happens when organizations make the catastrophic mistake of trying to contain someone who was never meant to be contained. The RSM Classic Pro-Am was supposed to be exactly what these events always are. A quiet weekend exhibition, some professionals, a few celebrities, modest local coverage. Nothing that would shift the national sports conversation or generate headlines beyond the golf world. Just another event in a calendar full of them. Then someone looked at the player list and saw one name, Caitlin Clark, and everything changed instantly. Tickets that had been sitting unsold for weeks vanished within hours. But here's the detail that reveals everything about what was actually happening. People weren't rushing to buy those tickets to watch Tiger Woods. They weren't scrambling to see the top LPGA stars compete. They were buying tickets specifically to watch a basketball player attempt golf. The woman who had transformed the WNBA's entire economic landscape was about to swing a driver, and suddenly everyone wanted to witness what would happen next. By sunrise on event day, the scene at the course looked nothing like a typical golf tournament. Fans lined up wearing Indiana Fever jerseys instead of golf polos. Basketball merchandise outnumbered traditional golf attire by visible margins. One announcer made a joke that it looked more like a Fever home game than a professional golf event. The observation was meant to be light-hearted, but it captured something profound about what was unfolding. The entire energy of the weekend had shifted. What was supposed to be a sleepy exhibition suddenly carried the atmosphere of a championship. When they announced her name on the first tee, thousands of people went completely silent. The kind of silence that only happens when a crowd collectively holds its breath, waiting to see something they suspect might be special. She walked to the tee box, calm as ever, smiling like this was just another Tuesday afternoon. Then she swung. The sound of contact was unmistakable, pure, clean. That sharp crack that only happens when everything aligns perfectly. The ball launched off the tee and flew 270 yards down the center of the fairway. Not a slice drifting into the rough. Not a hook curving toward trouble. Dead center. Exactly where a professional would want it. The crowd erupted. Tiger Woods, the man who has seen literally everything there is to see in golf, laughed and made a comment that observers reported as the best first swing he'd ever witnessed from a non-professional. Coming from someone with Tiger's credentials and his well-known reluctance to hand out unearned compliments, that wasn't just politeness. That was validation from the highest possible source. Within minutes, the social media explosion began. Steph Curry posted that Caitlin might actually be better than him at golf. That single comment sent her name trending worldwide. ESPN started comparing her to the most natural crossover athletes in sports history. Golf publications ran headlines declaring she had just changed the sport forever. The coverage wasn't measured or cautious. It was breathless recognition that something extraordinary was happening. Throughout it all, she maintained that humble demeanor that drives her critics absolutely insane. She had just come out to relax and have fun, she said. As if casually dominating a professional sport she doesn't even play was the most natural thing in the world, as if generating more buzz than most legitimate tournaments attract was just a typical weekend activity. But here's where the story shifts from impressive to absolutely revealing. Within 48 hours of the event concluding, Caitlin had reportedly finalized multiple major endorsement deals. A golf apparel company signed her to represent their brand. A high-end watch manufacturer locked in a partnership. A major beverage company secured her as the face of an upcoming campaign. A streaming service arranged a deal to document her training and potential future golf pursuits. The combined value of these agreements? $50 million? Let that figure settle for a moment. She generated more income from one weekend of exhibition golf than most WNBA players earn across their entire professional careers. Not in a single season, in their careers. The disparity isn't commentary or opinion. It's mathematics that anyone can verify. Sports business journalists started calling it the Clark effect, the phenomenon where her mere presence transforms the economic landscape of whatever event or league she touches. It had already been documented extensively in basketball, where her WNBA arrival caused ratings, attendance, and merchandise sales to spike dramatically. Now the same pattern was manifesting in a completely different sport, proving that the effect wasn't tied to basketball specifically, it was tied to her. The Pro-Am organizers revealed that her single appearance generated more revenue than their previous 3 events combined. 3 entire tournaments couldn't match what one basketball player accomplished in a single weekend of casual golf. Merchandise featuring her name and image outsold everything else at the venue. Golf fans who had no previous connection to basketball were driving the purchases, drawn in by the excitement of watching someone genuinely special compete. And here's where everything we've been discussing converges into one undeniable truth. 2 leagues responded to this moment in dramatically different ways. The LPGA celebrated openly. Their social media accounts promoted Caitlin's participation extensively. Their players welcomed her publicly and praised her privately. Their leadership recognized that her involvement brought attention to women's golf that years of traditional marketing efforts had failed to generate. They understood that embracing a star benefits everyone in the ecosystem, that her success created opportunities for the entire sport to reach new audiences. The WNBA's response? Silence. Official accounts made minimal acknowledgment of what was happening. The league that had benefited enormously from Caitlin's arrival in terms of ratings, attendance, and cultural relevance couldn't seem to find a way to celebrate her success in another arena. The organization that should have been proudly pointing to their star's crossover appeal instead acted like the whole thing wasn't happening. Drop a comment right now if you've noticed this pattern, because what we're witnessing isn't isolated behavior. It's a calculated strategy that's been unfolding since the moment Caitlin entered the league, and it's backfiring spectacularly. Fans noticed immediately and made their observations known across every platform. The comment sections filled with comparisons. One league promotes talent, the other league promotes drama. One organization understands marketing, the other organization understands pettiness. The assessments were harsh, but reflected genuine frustration from people who wanted to see women's sports succeed and couldn't understand why the WNBA seemed determined to undermine its biggest asset. For months, certain voices within the WNBA had attempted to control the Caitlin Clark narrative. They limited her promotional appearances. They downplayed her statistical impact. They pushed back against coverage that focused too heavily on her individual contributions. The strategy seemed designed to prevent any single player from becoming bigger than the league itself. But narratives can't be controlled when the subject keeps generating undeniable results. She wasn't just the most marketable player in women's basketball anymore. She was becoming one of the most marketable athletes in all of sports, period. And everyone outside the WNBA seemed to recognize this more clearly than the league itself. The golf weekend proved something that should terrify WNBA leadership. Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA, but the WNBA absolutely needs Caitlin Clark. The athletic community's response extended far beyond golf. Serena Williams called her performance amazing. Patrick Mahomes described her as a monster competitor. LeBron James reposted highlights with commentary, noting that she was simply different from everyone else. These weren't obligatory social media interactions from people with nothing better to do. These were genuine reactions from elite athletes who recognized excellence when they saw it and felt compelled to acknowledge it publicly. Tiger Woods continued to speak about her in interviews following the event. He compared the confidence she displayed to what he felt during his own breakthrough moments early in his career. Precision combined with fearlessness. The willingness to attack when others would play safe. The mentality that believes success is inevitable rather than merely possible. From someone who has defined sporting excellence for multiple generations, those comparisons carry extraordinary weight. The broadcast numbers confirmed what the crowds had demonstrated in person. Viewership for Caitlin's Pro-Am appearance exceeded what most LPGA tournament finals generate. Golf networks that typically draw modest weekend audiences suddenly found themselves pulling prime-time level traffic. The ratings weren't just good for a Pro-Am. They were exceptional by any standard the sport uses to measure success. Let's connect the dots that the WNBA seems desperate for everyone to ignore. When Caitlin entered the league, ratings exploded. When she played, arenas sold out. When she appeared in merchandise, sales shattered records. Every metric that matters in professional sports improved dramatically because of her presence. And instead of building an entire marketing strategy around their most valuable asset, the league treated her like a problem that needed to be managed. Now she's demonstrated that she can generate the same phenomenon in a completely different sport. She can walk onto a golf course she's never played professionally, swing a club in front of thousands of people, and Tiger Woods himself, and within 48 hours, secure $50 million in endorsements. She doesn't need basketball to be successful. She doesn't need the WNBA's platform to thrive. She has become the platform. The silence from WNBA players becomes even more revealing when you understand the context. These are women who have spent years advocating for better pay, more recognition, increased coverage of women's sports, legitimate concerns that deserve attention and action. Then along comes someone who actually generates the ratings, attendance, and revenue that could transform the entire economic structure of the league. And instead of celebrating that opportunity, many chose to resent it. Reading between the lines, the message was clear. They wanted the benefits of mainstream attention without accepting that sometimes one person generates disproportionate interest. They wanted collective recognition without acknowledging that star power isn't distributed equally. They wanted the rewards that come with popularity while rejecting the reality of how popularity actually works. Caitlin's golf weekend exposed this contradiction in the harshest possible light. The LPGA welcomed her and reaped massive benefits. Record viewership, sold-out crowds, international headlines, new fans discovering the sport, all because they had the wisdom to embrace talent rather than fear it. The WNBA had that same opportunity from day one and chose a different path. Now they're watching their biggest star prove she doesn't need them nearly as much as they need her. When asked later whether she would consider pursuing golf more seriously, potentially even joining the LPGA at some point, Caitlin smiled and offered a response that perfectly captured her approach. She was keeping her options open. The translation was clear to anyone familiar with her competitive nature. If she decides she wants to do something, she'll do it. And based on the evidence of this single weekend, she'll probably dominate. If this breakdown connected dots you've been seeing but couldn't quite articulate, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because the WNBA just entered its most dangerous phase. They created a star they can't control. Then watch that star prove she has options they never considered. We're tracking every move in this developing power dynamic, and what happens next will reshape women's sports forever. Caitlin Clark didn't just play a round of golf. She sent a message that rippled far beyond any course. She exposed the difference between organizations that see talent as opportunity and those that see it as threat. She turned silence into revelation, and she reminded everyone watching that greatness doesn't ask for permission. It simply performs. Then it gets paid. Then it moves on to the next challenge while everyone else is still trying to figure out what just happened. The answer is still unfolding. But one thing is certain. The WNBA just learned a very expensive lesson about what happens when you try to contain a force of nature.